have increased dramatically. And those pressures are between vendors and staffing, product shortages, even the books we order. A lot of times there are bestsellers we order, and our vendors can't fulfill those orders. And we are put on wait lists to get those books in a proper amount of time. I'm trying to find vendors for jobs at the library, facility needs. That's been a struggle as well. We have minimum wage, which has been an ongoing pressure. It's going to be $16 by the middle of our fiscal year. Teen room supervision. Last year, due to some running issues, we put a new service desk in the teen space. We have two individuals who staff that space, part-time positions. They staff it after school. And that's been an additional cost on the library. Our insurance costs, we've been seeing rapid increases there as well. Technology costs have been also run away with how much it's costing us, and especially our IT vendor. We have an IT company who services our equipment and services the library, and we've seen those costs skyrocket. And we've sent out RFPs, and it seems like every year those proposals we receive, those quotes, are also increasing exponentially. You have the state mandated retirement contributions. Healthcare costs have seen a huge increase. And then inflation and all these increases have been greater than what the tax cap allows us to increase as well. So that's put additional pressures on the library. So this is our proposed budget for next fiscal year. You can see each line, we've got about 53% going to salary. We are a service organization, and being a service organization, the bulk of what we spend is on personnel. Benefits are 22.82%. Library materials, just under 9%. Our occupancy costs, rent for the space we're in, because we're in the Fairport Village Landing Mall, and we rent that space from a landlord, so we pay the rent. Occupancy costs also include electricity, telephone, all that in there. That's about 6.5%. Equipment or technology, lease purchase software is just over 3%. Monroe County Library System. We're part of the Monroe County Library System. We pay what's called cost shares, and we receive added benefits being a member of the Monroe County Library System. For example, we get fiber optics right to our server in the building. That was provided through our partnership or membership within the Monroe County Library System. They're also the ones who handle delivery. So if you want a book, we don't have it, the library system delivers that book maybe from Greece, from Brockport, and vice versa. You can return your books at any member library in the county, and the system brings it to us. And there's other added on benefits that exist due to our membership in the Monroe County Library System. And then professional fees and the other fees associated with operating the library. So here's a look at our historical budgeted expenditures. So you can see over the years how it's increased, especially after COVID, with the costs of inflation and the costs of doing business. That's increased considerably. On this one, we have our personnel costs, and you can see our top line there, and the first column is our current fiscal year. Second column is our proposed budget for next fiscal year. That top line is professional. That would be our librarians, myself, assistant directors. We're in that line there, and there's just a slight increase to that line. Clerical, there's another slight increase on that line, and that's our library clerks who help circulate and process materials as they come in. Pages, slightly larger increase, but that's because our pages start at that minimum wage. And as I mentioned, it jumps up to 16 halfway through the fiscal year. And then aides, we are going to be cutting some hours there, and that's why there's a bit of a savings on that line. Overall, you can see on that bottom line, between, not the bottom line, but the middle line, just a slight increase from this current fiscal year to next fiscal year. And where we see the biggest increase on this slide is on the benefits line with health insurance. And here's our benefit breakdown. Slight savings when it comes to New York State retirement. Health insurance, we're seeing a huge cost increase there. And then FICA a little bit lower. All other benefits, just a slight increase on that line. And then here goes our non-tax levy revenue sources. First column, as I said, is current fiscal year. Next fiscal year, we're decreasing the projected amount of money we're taking in with fees, fines, and printing. People are printing less and less, so we're seeing less revenue come in from printing. Overdue fees, we got rid of fees on children's and teen books a number of years ago, right around when the pandemic hit. A lot of libraries have joined on and even actually removed overdue fees on adult materials as well. When we collect overdue fees, we're collecting overdue fees not just for books and DVDs from Fairport, but from around the system. And as more and more libraries get rid of adult overdue fees, we're seeing less revenue coming in from those overdue fees. Pilot we're keeping same. State aid we're keeping same. Just as a school district, we haven't heard what it will look like. Thankfully this year, the governor's budget did have a slight increase. The bulk of those monies go into the library systems. We only see a small percentage of that. So I imagine if between the one house budget or the budgets when they finally finish the negotiations, I doubt we'll see more than $12,000 from state aid. Now this one is the property tax levy or the tax cap calculation. I'm sure Jeremy will do a much better job on this than I will, but there's a really complicated calculation every year. I have to go into the website, plug in a bunch of numbers, but the bottom line is when you're looking at the tax cap calculation, you have the growth factors from what I understand. It's the growth of the tax base itself, and it adjusts how much you can increase your appropriation by. Then you factor in your pilot funds, and from there you have your allowable levy growth factor, which is that famous 2% tax cap. And it's actually, the max is 2%. It's actually based upon inflation or 2%, whichever is lower. So if inflation's at 0.75%, that number right there would be 0.075. But because inflation has been for the last few years way above 2%, it's been capped at that 2% tax cap, regardless of where inflation is. And then we have any available carryover from the previous year. We had $7,000 available to us to carry over from our previous year. So that's being factored in. That's monies that we did not increase by the previous fiscal year. So that comes up with our tax cap levy limit of 2.76%. There are no exclusions this year, and that means we can increase the tax levy by $76,000, which is precisely what we're going to go with, that $76,000 amount. So you can see our historical tax levy, what we've done over the years. In the midst of COVID, we did a couple years where we were at 0%. We kept our levy flat because of considerations of what was going on nationally with furloughing and everything else. Now looking back, I think that was a mistake, but that's neither here nor there. That's what we ended up doing. And this is our fund balance and the various allocations for that fund balance that the Fairport Library Board has decided. Next, we get into the service data of how the library's been doing. And you can see the final column there is 2024. You can see that we had about 645,000 items circulate over the course of the year. I've been telling my library board since May, that number is a bit inflated because the library system also instituted automatic renewals. So anybody who's a avid fan of the libraries, if you've got an item out 4 days before the item is due, it will automatic renew for you as long as it meets the parameters of a renewal. And because of that, I've warned my board, we saw a big jump in May. I said, things will even out and we'll have a better picture of how well we're doing with circulation month over month, year over year, once we get through this month. This month should be the first time we really see where our increases and decreases are. Digital circulation of digital materials, Libby, Hoopla, Canopy went down slightly from the previous year, but we also did see a slight increase in regards to the number of visitors. 246,000 people entered the library over the course of last year. You can see 2017, 2018, it was in the 300s. Now I've got to remind everyone that after a new library is built, you always see that big bump in attendance, and the library opened up in 2016. So we had that huge bump, and then there was a slight decrease. I really believe 2019 is probably where we were at pre-pandemic, that 284. But there's another caveat in there. We had a different software, pieces of technology that would read people as they came in. When we bought this new one that right in the middle of the pandemic, we had 6 months of overlap, and there was about a 20% difference between the old system and the new. The old system was about 20% higher than the new system during that 6 months. So I really believe we're at the levels we were in 2019. So essentially 2024 visits, as I mentioned, we had about 246,000 people come into the library. We were seeing about 89 people in the library per hour. If you come in during the summer, you'll notice it because our summer months are our busiest months. It's actually probably higher than that, probably twice that amount. But if you came in on a Wednesday in December in the evening, you'd be like, what? 89 people are in this library right now? That's impossible. Come in the summer, you'll see, I get sometimes text messages because I still have my counter set to warn me if we exceed capacity for COVID. And I've left that on because I just like to see once in a while when we've hit that 150 people in the library at one time and during a specific hour. I like getting those messages, so it's interesting. Anyways, that's the library visits. Total circulation for 2024, as you saw on that first slide, it's 645. So about 1,700 items a day that are checked out, renewed by people who visit the Fairport Public Library. Here's our programming data. You can see all the different programming lines. Early literacy, we had about 22,000 individuals over the course of 2024 visiting the public library. Programming for children, that's besides the early literacy. There's another 7,000 there. 2,000 attendees at teen programs over the course of 2024. And then 11,000 adults coming to the library for programming as well, for a grand total of 43,000 attendees at library programming. And that we average about 28 attendees per program at the Fairport Public Library. Let me go back. I forgot to mention also with circulation, Fairport Public Library is the busiest library, and I mention this every year because we're still it. One year, if I don't mention it, it means that we've probably lost it. But we are the busiest public library building in Monroe County. We see more circulation than any other building in the county. And I say building because if you look at all the city branch libraries together, they beat us for circulation. But any individual building, Fairport Public Library sees more circulation, more than the downtown Central Library, more than Greece, more than Webster, more than communities with more people than we have. So that shows you how well used, how well loved the Fairport Public Library is. This goes over, I kind of went over this earlier about the Monroe County Library and cost shares. This goes through a list of everything that they offer, shared collections, our catalog, all of that's done through the Monroe County Library system. If we were to, I have never heard of a library leaving a library system, but if we were to try to pull out of the Monroe County Library system, it would cost us a lot more than what we currently pay in cost shares. And then this is the cost of library services for 1 year. You can see in 25, 26, for a property assessed at $200,000, based upon the current tax rate and tax rolls, it'd be about $162 a year for the Fairport Public Library. And I always like to do this last slide because I know every once in a while I get a question from a board member on the school board about how what our relationship is with the Fairport School District. We're a completely separate entity from the school district. We have our own separate board of trustees. We have a separate budget. In fact, in 1839, almost 200 years ago, the residents of Fairport voted to approve a purchase of a library for $10. And that was the ancestor of what would eventually become the Fairport Public Library. It kind of, from what I understand, existed in a school, and it was very limited access. And then in the late 1800s, the community said, we need a separate building, we need separate librarian, we need to completely separate off from the school district. And that's when the Fairport Public Library became the first state-chartered library in Monroe County. So we got that certificate from the Department of Education and became the Fairport Public Library. As I said, we're the first, from my research, we were first in Monroe County and one of the first across New York State. We were actually chartered before the New York Public Library in New York City, just to understand the history of that. We are the only school district public library in Monroe County, but there's a number of us throughout the state. Last time I counted, there are about 163 school district public libraries that utilize this school district public library law to have the community elect our trustees and have the community approve our budget. I think the bulk of these school district libraries are in Long Island. As you can see, Nassau has 33, Suffolk has 31, and around us, 13 in the OWL system across Ontario, Wyoming, Wayne, Livingston, and then 8 across Niagara, Orleans, and Genesee. And that's it.
Thanks, Carl. And I like that last slide because I do feel like we often get that question as to why it's together. So,
Great job, Carl.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of the Fairport Central School District. Carl, I just have to say that was another amazing presentation. The way that you quantify the value of your program, it really captures the importance of what it does for our community. So thank you very much. Looking forward to being on the ballot with you in May, on May 20th here. We're here to talk about our budget here, the Fairport Central Schools 25-26 school budget. I just really need to say thank you very much to Matt Stevens, our former Assistant Superintendent for Business, working collaboratively with Jeremy Nardone, our new Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations. Did a wonderful job of catching up and getting up to speed and making this budget his own in collaboration with Monica Shannon and Chris Ecker in the business office. To the district office team, thank you so much. Administrators, staff, we reached out to community members, so many different hands made this budget possible. And we see the value being played out in our students. Our students actually give us feedback, and their feedback, whether it's speaking to us during the school day, seeing how they take advantage of our programming, how they achieve in so many different ways, that data is incredibly important, and we're excited to be talking about the budget and our process here tonight, a little bit about our enrollment and our sections. I see some people here that were part of our Under the Hood presentation that we did in the winter. It's important that, I'm glad that they're following up and continue to be a part of this conversation. You'll see some of this data in this presentation that we talked about in January and February. We'll be talking about the three-part budget, the program, the administrative and capital components, which was approved by the Board of Education last month. A lot of this, if you've been following us along, it's online. We've been talking about it as President Bellis-Pacer spoke to at workshops and business meetings throughout the past several months and throughout the year. Mr. Nardone is going to talk about the revenue components and some voter propositions as part of this evening's presentation. And as Mrs. Bellis-Pacer spoke to, there's multiple interactions that occur after May 20th. The budget process continues. It just doesn't stop throughout the summer. The board sets goals, which we'll get to in a second. That helps us begin and plan our budget season. 12 interactions to date with the budget. We're here at the public hearing. Tomorrow night, there'll be a opportunity to hear from those members who will be running for the 2 open seats. So please tune in to the YouTube or come down to 512 at, I believe, 7 o'clock, right?
Yep, and the library person will be here too.
Dr. Morris
6:30.
and Janice Fortuna.
6:30.
6:30.
6:30 here.
Yep.
Oh my
6
gosh.
o'clock? 6 o'clock, yep. It will be on YouTube, so we'll definitely have it shared. Our budget goals, I'm proud to present a budget that hits the mark. We're right on target, presenting a budget that speaks to our school improvement initiatives, specifically that we're talking to. We have an incredibly expansive programming. We're proud of the whole child programming that helps students achieve their personal best, aligning resources to maximize student learning. You'll be hearing about how we're doing that in this budget, and strengthening the district's universal UPK program, because the board believes that it's incredibly important. Research asserts that the sooner we get our students and families into our school system, the better it is to support learning that occurs UPK through 12th grade. And of course, facilities planning, making sure that they're modern, environmentally sustainable, and safe, as important as anything else, and making sure that we're being fiscally responsible and keeping transparency at the forefront of our process, and of course, our excellent rating and financial position. Those are our board goals. I'm proud to say that we're right on target. As with each one of our presentations, we've been talking about enrollment. We've been talking about enrollment for the past several years. We've spent a lot of time. Mr. Loff, thank you very much. And Mr. Stevens in the business office, and Jeremy soon. Always keeping a close eye on enrollment, studying it, making sure that we're able to do accurate projections. And true to form, our enrollment has been declining. It's been declining since I was a middle school principal 20 years ago. But we're at a place where it's leveling off now. We're seeing anywhere from 1, in some years, 2% decrease. Since 2014, I believe we've lost about 1,100 students. Again, all things that have been part of enrollment studies. And one enrollment study said the reason why that happened is because people don't move or leave out of Fairport or Perrington. It's beautiful, from our public library to all the great things that occur in our village, Trailtown USA to our Parks and Recreation program. There's tons of value. And when people do move, houses get sold quick. But back in the 70s and 80s, there were 4 or 5 bedroom houses, and people were filling those with 4 or 5, house residents in there, students, children. But now there's anywhere from 1 to 2 as a general rule, and occasionally you get your 3 or 4s, sometimes 5s, but they're more the exception than the rule. So that's what's affecting our enrollment. As you can see, class sizes, again, they were up in the 500s when I was initially a principal here at JP 20 years ago. Fairport High School is graduating 550 to 600, but through the years, again, we're settling between the 400 and 440 mark. We believe that 359 that you're seeing incoming will increase throughout time. That's what happens in Fairport. People will be moving in. People will be getting, leaving their private school placement to enter our public school, or homeschool placement to enter our public schools. This budget speaks to the Fairport priority of making sure that we keep our classes at academically credible and opportunities for students and staff to interact in positive ways. And you'll see, again, I'm not going to read every single one of them, but starting in kindergarten up to 18, first grade up to 19, and as we move through, the elementary years in the middle school, 6th grade will have a target of 26. And there is attrition. Through attrition, that means we are not hiring back through natural retirements, and because of decline enrollment, you'll see that there are changes in the number of sections on the right-hand side, netting out to 6 less sections because of decline enrollment. There were no layoffs, very intentionally making sure that we have staff, use our staff. We do staffing analysis every single year to make sure that we're getting the most out of staff, and these are the positions we are not hiring back. Secondary, again, grades 7 and 8, maintaining teaming structure, the credibility of teaming, anywhere from 23 to 26, and grades 9 through 12, 24 to 27. Those are class sizes that we're very would rival or be better than many of our neighboring districts. Again, this is a priority, and allows us to have interactions with our students and make meaningful connections with the class sizes that we offer. There are anomalies where, whether it's an art class or a technology class, where the class sizes are a little bit smaller. Sometimes there's elective programs that we're trying to get going. Class sizes may be a little bit smaller. These are just averages, and we're happy to say that the budget we are presenting maintains these averages. Impacts, when I present the 3-part budget, this is the story. And Carl shared the impacts that is occurring at the public library. Those inflationary pressures are impacting Fairport. You see that with equipment and supply costs all the way on the bottom. So when you see increases, that's influencing it, each one of those line items. But I'll go back to the top, I'm sorry, jump into staffing and employee benefits. 72% of our organization is staffing. We are a people organization. And so those expenses, and again, we're obligated and honored to support our staff and make sure that we're honoring contracts. And you'll see that employee benefits, not just in Fairport, but throughout Monroe County, there's going to be a 9.3% increase in our employee health care costs. Again, that happens from time to time, and that's impacting our budget, and you'll see that. School improvement, I'm really actually proud of this, focusing on the learning and teaching and learning that's occurring, our programming that is so expansive. That's all school improvement. You see standards, assessment, grading. These are teams, teacher teams that are working on making sure that we do this in a consistent manner in all of our buildings. And that's exciting for guys like us, because we like to see that curricular programmatic coherence, because that translates into student achievement. Curriculum alignment, so no matter what school that you go to, we are giving a guaranteed and viable curriculum. UPK investment, as I spoke to earlier, mental health and wellness. Really proud of the fact, and I know the board has always made this a priority since I've been superintendent, is making sure that we take care of the heart and the wellness, the social emotional well-being, in addition to the academic pieces and the elective co-curricular programming. As Mr. Clark always says, our high school boasts an expansive program that gives students opportunities. It helps them define who they are. Highly intentional, our athletic program, our performing arts program, that's part of this budget. At the elementary school, I can go on and on. Spark Labs, the Spark Night that we were able to see a few weeks back, were K-8 families. We had close to 1,000 family members in the K-8 community come out and interact with members from our community and on the science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematic disciplines. And of course, summer programming, that's about school improvement. You'll see how that's impacting this budget. Safety and security, it's on everyone's mind, and it's a priority for the board. It's a priority for our staff and our families as well. Special education services, we're honored to give a continuum of services, making sure that we keep our students in Fairport and they're able to experience the beauty and wonder of our community. Software programming and licensing, like Pick My Kid. I know many of you have experienced that. BOCES, it's our partner, School Tool, Parent Square. These are pieces that we, or software that we engage in that impacts the budget. And more than ever, we're a real live entity. We're a real live organization, and these are real costs to continue to give the same wonderful experiences that our students have experienced and will be able to experience in the future with the voters' continued support. Also, on the revenue side, fund balance and reserves were part of our story this year. Mr. Nardone is going to speak a little bit how the 2% foundation aid and formula is impacting our school budget. The revenue side of state aid, building aid to support debt service, we have debt coming off. That means on the revenue side, we won't be getting the benefits of any revenue coming in opposite of that debt service. And fund balance reserve usage, again, a story of how we balance the budget, of how we're going to give reserves back to the community to make sure that we're balancing our budget and doing it in a sustainable, fiscally responsible way. So the first piece of this is our program budget. And again, I'm not going to go over this again, but we're offering the same exact program that was the Board of Education district goal, that, and we're able to achieve that by giving the same programming. We put that in there because Ms. Bells-Pacer likes pictures. So, I think we needed to keep that in there. So no, they weren't letting me taking that out. But here it is, what it looks like on the spreadsheet, staff development. Again, that's a school improvement COSER. Again, school improvement. How do we build capacity in our staff? You'll see a 5.35% increase. That's because of that BOCES school improvement COSER, professional development on how we're building capacity in our staff summer school. The board wants to make sure that those students who are at risk or those students who need a little bit more time in school are given the opportunity during summer. That's reflected pretty much in our STAR summer school programming. It's a great program. About anywhere from 60 to 70 kids will be a part of that. Staff runs that. It's a wonderful experience, keeps kids connected and engaged during the time in the summer and during the middle years. And of course, there's summer school in our elementary schools and high school as well. But most of that, 11%, is from the middle school. Student services or pupil services, student activities and athletics, 4.65%. That's pretty much going to be related to safety and security. You go around and again, we have an obligation to make sure that people are feeling comfortable and safe. And you'll see how our centuries make wonderful connections and are present and interacting with our community members. So overall, again, there's that 9.36% increase in employee benefits. We will continue to see that based upon the healthcare costs related to supporting an organization for a total program of program increase of 3.9% from last year. Second part of our program budget, of our three-part budget is the administrative budget. That's pretty much the administrative services, the costs associated with the administration of our district and each of our school buildings. And again, you sort of saw it. It's the administration, it's the software, it's the cost of doing business in many different cases. And again, you see some of those things and you use them, and you see them come across your email or, you know, BOCES and so on and so forth, how it's used. But, you know, there's a cost to that. And you'll see a 7.24% increase. That's supplies and materials, as I was referring to in that previous slide. Salary and contracts in the superintendent's office as well. That's an increase there of 7.24%. Other central services, I call this the cost of doing business line. Again, that's our state reporting tools. That's our sub-calling systems, our business software. We have to do many state reporting, and you know many of that's electronic. And again, those pieces are going up, and we have to be responsive, and that's why you see a 13.06% increase. And again, there's that employee benefits of 9.3%. Again, consistently seen throughout the three-part budget, and the total administrative increase is 6.43%. My favorite slide of all time, again, going with the theme of how we are building a budget or recommending a budget or presenting a budget, I should say, that is directly aligned to our goals, dedicating financial resources to support the modernization and upkeep of our facilities, prioritizing the funding and use of district reserves to align with our facilities plans and efforts to shift to a more regular schedule. So we have smaller projects that don't impact the community as much, but it's the upkeep of our facilities. Our facilities are always being used. It's exciting. And so many different times I'll email or text message, you know, board members and talk about, man, if you go to Minerva Deland, you go to the high school, you come to the high school or Martha Brown, our facilities are constantly in use. And we're proud to make sure that they're safe and well kept and something we can be proud of. Again, the capital budget speaks to the costs associated with operation, maintenance, and security of our school facilities. And security is, safety and security is run throughout all three parts of the budget as well, right? Because, you know, when we're talking about the security of our facilities here, we're talking about the cameras, right? We're talking about the infrastructure to support a safe school environment. Bus purchases, debt service, and interfund transfers. You'll see that the operation, maintenance, and security is a 2.5% increase. Again, there's that employee benefits again, 9.3%, as I spoke to earlier on. And then you see minus 44%. That's because there's short-term bonds are coming off the books, and they're going to long-term, I would say loans, if you will. The $56 million project from 2019 is now coming on the books long-term. So we're no longer using the short-term bonds to pay for that project. We're shifting it to the long-term. And what's happening now is the 2020-23 project, which we're going to be beginning, is coming on the books for the debt service. So that's out to a minus 44, but you also see where it comes back on at 14% for the interfund transfer. And you also know in there is the capital outlay project, which we're excited. And I know no one's more excited than Mrs. Moretter. We're going to continue to do flooring at Northside. And so you take a look at the capital budget, and it's actually goes down minus 1.03%. Moving along, bus purchases. You know, again, 1 million miles driven each year, right? 4,900 students transported daily. Those are some pretty powerful statistics, right? And not to mention, and I'm really proud of this fact, we have an impeccable safety record. The Department of Transportation continually comes in, they part of their work, and they inspect our buses, right? And just like, you know, when you put miles on your car and you want to make sure you have the safest and best for your family, we do the same for our students and our buses here in Fairport. We're looking, again, on a 10-year replacement cycle. We're going to be we're going to be turning in 9 70-passenger replacement buses, and the total cost is $1.8 million, minus the trade-in. You don't get a lot for a trade-in. What is that? That equals out to be like
$2,500 per bus.
$2,500 per bus, right? You'd think you'd get more, but that's not happening. And we're going to be only trading in 5 out of those 9 buses. And we're going to keep the 4 back because the Department of Transportation comes in randomly and we have to take buses off. There's mechanical issues that we need to continually deal with, the maintenance and upkeep of the buses that are in the regular run. So having that fleet continue to be a part, I think that's helpful. And we're going to be using the general fund. Now, the Board of Education a few years back wanted to start relying on the general fund to support our bus purchases and using our reserves to offset when necessary, which is the case this year. And Mr. Nardone is going to be talking about what that looks like on the ballot in May or in a few weeks for a total cost of $1.8 million. Again, the reserves are being used to offset the cost of that. So you take a look at the 3-part budget, the program 3.9%, the administrative cost 6.43%, and the capital component is minus 1.03% for a total of 3.45% for a 3-part budget. Now, Mr. Nardone is going to speak a little bit about how we're going to work to support the revenue side of that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Provenzano. So revenue budget, interesting. I'm talking to you about the revenue budget, and the state budget has not come out yet. So a little weird there, but it's okay because Fairport is set to get the due minimum this year in foundation aid. So the foundation aid formula is just being redone, and the 2% due minimum, we have not seen any inkling that that's going to be less, but let's knock on wood that I say that. So 2 major forms of revenue for school districts. Fairport is heavily reliant on property taxes and the tax levy. That's at about $90 million. And then the rest pretty much is made up of state aid. So state aid is anything from foundation aid to BOCES aid, transportation aid. We get aid on our special education students. We also throw in some pilots there. We're going to talk about pilots when we get to the tax levy slide and really talking about that tax cap. We also get sales tax reimbursement from Monroe County, so there's $6.8 million there. Other revenue, the main 2 sources of that is interest revenue. Interest rates have been high. If anybody has some money right now laying around in a savings account, you'll see that CD rates have been above 3.5 to as high as 5% over the past couple of years. So we do recognize some interest revenue there. Our treasurer has done an amazing job of taking the revenue and the money that the school district has and investing that to make sure that we get the best outcome for our residents. In addition, there's also a refund of BOCES services. So what happens is with BOCES is you sign up for services throughout the year, at the beginning of the year, and then you pay 1/10 of that cost throughout the year. If you don't use some of that, it gets returned next year as a revenue source. So that's part of that revenue as well. There's other factors, but it's really minuscule in dollar amounts. Those are the 2 main sources. We do get some federal Medicaid. And then we have the assigned fund balance and assigned reserves, and that's how much we're relying on reserves. We're going to talk about these in a few slides because you'll see the increases that we've seen in those 2 categories. So state aid, our revenue. So foundation aid, you'll say, Jeremy, you just told me we're going to get 2% due minimum. Why do I see 1.5? That's an excellent question. So because the state budget has been late over the past couple of years, when we adopted the 24-25 budget, we had a state aid foundation aid number that was a little bit higher than what we actually received because they did a last minute adjustment. Because the foundation aid formula has been fully phased in now for about 2 years, it's based on student counts. Your student counts are changing right up till September. So 1 less student can pretty much lose you $11,000 to $20,000 in aid. So because they fully funded in the formula, we didn't have an accurate number when we proposed the budget, and that's why you only see a 1.5% increase. That happens at a lot of schools over the past couple of years because the formula has now been fully phased in. Transportation, BOCES, and building aid, you'll see a $1 million decrease there. Mr. Provenzano nailed it. Our debt service, you see a decrease there. That's because the amount we're paying on our capital improvement projects are going down. When that debt goes down, the corresponding aid goes down in addition. Excess cost aids, those are, there's 2 forms. There's private and public excess cost, and that's what you get for special education students. Your private is students who go to private schools like Mary Cariola, Norman Howard, School of the Holy Childhood, and then your public excess cost aid are students who attend our BOCES programs. That's staying flat, and those services are provided to us through Questar for a very small dollar amount, and they make sure that the school district stacks all appropriate students to make sure that we're getting everything that we are eligible to get. And then aidable materials. So again, Mr. Provenzano talked about declining enrollment. A lot of this, the aided materials, are a per pupil aided amount. As our per pupils go down, our aid actually goes down. So that's why you'll see a little bit of a decrease there of $500,000. And total state aid is actually decreasing. Again, the major portion of that, though, is related to debt drop-off and also student decrease. So it's not like it's hurting us on the expense side either. Tax levy limit calculation. You did it justice. I don't know if I can do it better than you, but yeah, so with this formula, it's a very complex formula. The governor, as we mentioned in our last presentation, says it's 2%. They're talking about one number. They're talking about that middle number that's the lesser of 2% or the rate of inflation. They leave out, when they talk to this about the community, they leave out all the other factors, starting with the tax-based growth factor. That's the same as you'll see from the library compared to the school. That is actually a number that's state and set by New York State. We have no say on it, and it's based on growth in the area. You do an addition to your house. All that stuff factors into the tax-based growth factor. We are able to add in prior year pilots. So again, we're talking about the 2025-26 school year. Prior year is a 24-25, so it's the current year as we sit right now. It gets a little confusing. But we can add that money back in, but you'll see down low, we got to subtract out pilots in the upcoming year. Pilots are money that the school district receives that's outside the tax rolls. When a business wants to come and set up shop in a town or a community, they try to get a tax discount. And what do? They say, well, I want to come there, but you've got to give me a tax discount to come. And why do people do that? Well, it does that because it brings jobs, infrastructure, commerce to an area. So they'll set up an agreement. It's called a pilot agreement. It's off the assessment rolls, and those pilot agreements usually last 10 years. So the increase in pilot is just because every year that goes forward, less of the agreement becomes exempt, and they pay more taxes. When those pilots go away, they actually come back onto the books, which lowers the taxes for the community. So we look at that, and I'll be doing a presentation again, probably next school year, that talks about our different pilots that we offer and when we anticipate them coming off the books. And then you get your capital levy carryover. So again, you've got to subtract it from the prior year and add it for the current year. That's the difference in your debt compared to your aid. So if your debt is greater than your aid, it becomes an exclusion, and you're able to go out and get that money from the community. So you can see there's a $600,000 decrease there. And again, as Mr. Provenzano said, the $56 million project is coming onto the books. And we also have the 2023 project coming on in the term of a ban, short-term borrowing. So that's going to affect your debt there and your aid. So total, you'll see the tax levy limit there of $90,355,000 or 2.98%. And that is what the district is looking to go out for this year. Just so everybody knows, the rate of inflation that was set by the state is at 2.95%. So we're going out pretty much right at the rate of inflation. Tax rate projection. So this is up in the air, and a lot of people have actually come to me and talked to me about their taxes being so high. Yes, if you look at the tax rate, it does look high compared to what you see in other residences, so other towns. There's a reason for that. The equalization rate for the town of Perrington is 57%. That in essence means homes are being taxed on 50% less. So if you're being taxed on a home that's really assessed at $300,000, it should really be assessed at $600,000. They just haven't done that reval yet, which is coming in September of 2026. Now, don't get worried. That just means, Jeremy, you just told me my assessment's going to go up $300,000. When assessments go up, the tax rate decreases. So you'll see right now our tax rate that we're projecting is $26.01. Our tax rate for 24-25 was $24.95. If assessments were valued at 100% equalization rate, our true tax rate is really only about $17.80 per thousand, and that more aligns with other districts. So what will happen is when the assessor increases the valuation of your homes, there'll be an average. Let's say the average is $100,000. If your house goes up more than $100,000, your tax bill will increase slightly. If it goes up at $100,000, it'll stay the same as the prior year. And if it goes up less than $100,000, you'll actually see a tax savings. So projected revenue, this just gives you a screenshot of our revenue. Again, we start off with the property taxes being at that 2.98%. Our pilots are going up about 20% this year. Sales tax and other, you'll see about a $1.4 million increase. That is sales tax. As we are still seeing spending in the county, we are recognizing more of that sales tax as a revenue source because we know we're going to get that. In addition, we are increasing our interest revenue. Interest rates are anticipated to stay high. So what we do is we get a weekly summary from our bank that says what a CD and what a treasury bill investment is for 1 month all the way up to 12 months. A 12-month investment still sits over 3.5%. That's why we are confident saying that we'll still bring that in an interest. That doesn't mean it's a guarantee. There are no guarantees, but all the information that we have right now points that we will still get that interest revenue next year. So we want to recognize that so we don't increase taxes more than the 2.98%. Again, state aid, as I talked about, going down $1 million. That's mainly your building aid. Federal Medicaid and assigned fund balance is staying the same. So assigned and appropriated fund balance is money that we take at the end of 24-25 and use it in 25-26. The more we use, the less we can actually fund reserves, do year-end purchases. That helps the district out. And again, one of those reserves that the district likes to fund is the capital reserve. That way we can do capital projects in the future and not increase taxes to do so. And then we have the assigned reserves. You will see a $2.3 million increase there. And Mr. Provenzano said it at the beginning of the presentation. We have those reserves for a rainy day. We are anticipating that it's going to rain. Let's use that. And let's actually use those reserves before we make drastic changes to our either programming or the taxes. And you'll see a total budget of $165 million, which is that 3.45% increase. So here is our fund balance and reserves usage over the past 4 years. So you can see all the way down at the bottom, we went from 6.5 to 7.2 to 8.7 to $11 million. Again, this is all planned. And all these new reserves that we're adding in are strategic by the district because we can use money. Let's point out the EBLAR reserve. Everything that we pay out to employees are contractual. If we pay out employees for sick time when they retire, we can actually utilize that EBLAR reserve to pay those payments. So that's why we're being strategic into what reserves we want to use based on what our budget allows us to use. So again, we think that this budget is great, and it actually sets us up for future. And this is fund balance and reserves, and this will also show you the balanced budget. So again, if you take your total revenues on that second line, add in your transfer from debt service, and add in your assigned fund balance, you get your revenue and fund balance and reserves. And you can see line 1 matches line 5, and that shows that we have a balanced budget. And then that shows you the history of what the assigned fund balance and reserves have been as a percentage of our overall budget. So again, although it's going up, it's only going up about 1.5%. So it's not the end of the world, but definitely something that we want to monitor because as we rely more on your reserves, think about that as your personal residence. You rely more on your savings, eventually that savings account dries up. So we want to make sure that we're staying cognizant of it, but also giving it back to the taxpayers where we see fit. So voter propositions is just a fancy slide showing the ballot going in. Voters, thank you for approving our bus purchase reserve fund in 2024 that allows us to set money aside for transportation vehicles. And this year we are looking to use up to $206,000 for the purchase of a bus. I know as Mr. Provenzano said, the number was about $202,000. We always want to estimate a little bit higher than what the bus actually costs because of tariffs. So that's a fun word that's been thrown around a lot. We want to make sure that we're protected and that we can actually buy a bus in case the cost does go up a little bit. So one of the propositions on the ballot outside of the budget and outside of the election of the board members will be to allow us to use $206,000 from this reserve fund to purchase one bus. And again, as Mr. Provenzano said, we are buying 9 buses. This just helps us fund the one.
And one of the goals that was set forth and confirmed in November was to make sure that we were fiscally sustainable, keeping sustainability and transparency at the forefront of our budget process, and continuing to maintain our strong financial position and bond rating, which we have achieved and continue to achieve the highest ratings based upon our management of our fiscals. And you'll see, and I would be completely out of line if I did not recognize Lindsay Rettig and Lauren Leone, who've been a part of our campaign of transparency, whether it's under the hood, whether it's the commentator that you see in your homes. It speaks to the value of our schools, and they do it in a way that captures our Fairport budget story. And we invite you to continue to go to our website and visit the budget page to learn about our budget story. It's chronicled from the start of the school year to this very day. You'll be able to see workshop conversations and business meeting conversations where we talked about reserve utilization and some of the bigger pieces that we sort of stood at a higher level. We really nuanced, and I appreciate the board walking us and being a part of this and making sure that we were given clarity on how we can make sure that we give our students what they deserve and what they can continue to build upon and what our community expects. We're proud to be a part of that. And again, meet the candidates. Dr. Brian Moritz and Mrs. Janice Fortuna will be at Fairport High School here in room 512 starting at 6 p.m. I got that right this time. And then on May 20th, we're going to be going to the polls. We'll be inviting people to Joanna Perrin Middle School from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Will the two open seats where Dr. Moritz and Mrs. Fortuna for their Board of Election seats will be brought to the community on that date. Thank you very much. I would like to now open it up to any questions that you may have. And some of you have been with us throughout the year and asked questions, but don't be afraid if you need more clarification, be happy to do so right now, including that side of the. We are here. We're not going to go too far. So if you have questions, we'll be happy to stick around and talk a little bit more. But again, looking forward to seeing everybody soon. Thank you, Mr. Gavoya and the Fairport Public Library for all that you give to our community, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody on May 20th. Thank you.